Welcome to today's webinar entitled Making Facebook Live Bulletproof, a discussion with the creators of Wowza ClearCaster. My name is Evan Paul, and I work with the marketing team here at Wowza, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined here today by two very special guests, Barry Owen, our VP of Engineering, and Charlie Good, our CTO and co-founder. Together, Barry and Charlie are the driving force and creators of the ClearCaster. I don't know why we have a profile shot of Barry on there, but we do. So for those of you that are fuzzy on what the ClearCaster is, let me give you the 20-word description, and then I won't talk anymore, I promise. Simply, the ClearCaster, built in collaboration with Facebook, is a purpose-built solution to provide the highest quality, most reliable broadcast on Facebook Live. Or, said differently, making Facebook Live bulletproof. And that's the extent of my marketing language. I swear I won't say any more about the ClearCaster. But let's go on to the reason why we're here. We're here to have a discussion with Barry and Charlie. We've gathered a lot of interesting questions and comments from the market, both from current ClearCaster customers as well as others who are investigating the technology. And we'll use those to start the conversation. However, if you have questions throughout, please feel free to enter those questions in the little chat bar there or the question bar, and we will weave those into our conversation with Barry and Charlie as they discuss what the ClearCaster does and how it works. But before we get into the real conversation, I know that Barry and Charlie, you wanted to do a couple of shout-outs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to say, so forgive me when Charlie and I stomp on each other. We're actually not in the same room. So we may talk on top of each other from time to time, but that's what we do in real life too.
Exactly. That happens a lot. Yeah, I'm in my basement in Cincinnati, Ohio, and everyone else is in the home office in Golden, Colorado.
Cool.
So I guess I'll start off. So we're going to go to this slide around Facebook. So, I mean, I really wanted to start off by thanking the Facebook team. We worked very tightly with kind of a close, fairly small but actually ever-growing team of people at Facebook, and this has probably been one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on in my career, and I think Barry feels the same. And it's cool. The Facebook team was very helpful in making this happen. It was very much a collaborative effort. I definitely want to thank the top three people that we work with very closely, which was Colleen Henry, Michael Martinez, and Eric Zawalko. They were just awesome, and we were with them every day, working hard, trying to make this thing happen extremely quickly. I think from kind of concept to the first piece of hardware going out to a customer was like less than 9 months. And then, again, a shout out to the extended team of Rahul and Mike O and Sebastian and Natasha and Ian and Joyce and Kirill and Peter and Ron. I mean, all those folks were involved in different ways and really helpful for us getting this thing off the ground quickly. And it's tough when you have two companies coming together, especially one the size of Facebook. It's tough to be nimble and quick. And it would not have happened except for a team that was very focused and interested in the kind of end goal of making Facebook Live streaming better.
Yeah, absolutely. And no doubt that the influence of Facebook and their constant ideas and encouragement have just been super helpful for us to get this project over the top.
Perfect. That's really great, guys. And personally, I'd like to thank the two of you for being here and doing what you do for our company.
And it wasn't just Charlie and I, right? I mean, we have a great team here at Wowza, product engineering, QA, hardware. It was really a big group effort to be able to produce Wowza's first piece of hardware. As Charlie said, in record time, and certainly something we didn't do alone.
Perfect. So let's jump into it. See if I can move this slide. I have so much stuff here, I can't even see the question. Why did Facebook approach Wowza to create the ClearCaster? So let's start real high level. What started this all out?
Yeah, I mean, really, this is all out of Colleen Henry's her vision. Like it was an amazing vision of how do we make Facebook live streaming better? How do we bring in more of the bigger broadcasters and folks with interesting content and the folks that want to stream, off into Facebook? And so it was really her vision. I think Wowza came in, our team, as a pair of skillful hands to help kind of bring that to fruition. And the beginning of the story is kind of interesting because the first goal was actually to create a piece of software that would do what the ClearCaster does today. And the hardware would be really just a list of pieces and parts that you put together on your own. You'd go buy the motherboard and the CPU and the power supply and the case and put it together per our specs to build the ClearCaster. It was probably 2-3 months into that approach that we realized that it probably wasn't going to be the right way to go, and that us building the hardware was a better way. But the vision for what the product should be, the features, how it should be put together, what it should be to the customer, how to make it magical and really make Facebook Live better was all in the head of Colleen Henry. And so again, thank her for that vision. We really were from the beginning focused on one thing, like how do we make the broadcast success rate better? How do we make it more reliable, higher quality streaming to Facebook Live? And that's been the core mantra from the product from the beginning, and that's what we've been working towards. And that's really why the two companies came together. I mean, we came in with encoding skills that we had from Wowza Streaming Engine, our transcoding product. We certainly understand protocols and transports, and we understand how to build a streaming engine, a media server, that piece of it. But we certainly understand the shortcomings on the encoding side as well, and we felt we could really help to make that experience better. And then Facebook brought in their large audience and their infrastructure and all of those pieces. And so it was a really kind of perfect marriage. But again, from the beginning, it was all focused on quality and success.
And the Facebook team is very passionate about that. Colleen wants a super high quality, super reliable stream into Facebook. The broadcast success rate is just critical for them. And that was really the driving factor. And as Charlie said, eliminating points of failure and eliminating areas where someone could go astray was the key, which really led us from the original blueprint concept of here's a recipe, go build your own, to we're going to give you something that just works.
Perfect answer. Great. I think that the big bullet points there are the key success metric and the quality of the video. And I think that's
Absolutely.
kind of what's been driving you guys. It's been driving Colleen and
and it's also the fact that we're building a quality stream that's essentially a known quality and a trusted quality to Facebook, and they know that the streams coming from a ClearCaster are going to be a certain format, a certain profile, a certain quality level, and they trust those streams, and they can take advantage of that on their side in their infrastructure as well.
Perfect. Great. Let's move on to the next one. That was a good one. What happens when ClearCaster auto-configures the encoding settings? And I've wondered this myself a lot of times. What's the magic there? What happens? What's going on between the ClearCaster and the Facebook API when that happens?
And I think this is what makes ClearCaster fairly unique, right? Like most encoders, you configure them directly and you're storing profiles and configurations in the encoder itself that's being used to kind of push a stream to an infrastructure. We looked at that kind of inside out and said it like really, and especially in the case of a Facebook or a YouTube, that the infrastructure should drive the encoding settings, because the infrastructure or the kind of streaming platform is, they're going to know what's best for their platform and the audience or even the situation of what type of streaming you're doing. So the way that ClearCaster works is when you kind of pair your encoder with Facebook and when you start a broadcast, it goes into what we call the capture phase. And during that phase, the encoder will report back to Facebook the parameters of the incoming stream that's coming in over SDI or HDMI. So we'll tell it the frame size is 1920 by 1080 and it's running at 30 frames per second and the audio is 48 kilohertz stereo. We'll report all that information to Facebook, and Facebook will come back and tell us exactly what encoding parameters to use. So it'll say, I want you to use H.264, high profile, 4 B frames, GOP size of 2 seconds, and then the bit rates as well. We want to encode at 8 megabits per second the audio and 96 kilobits per second for the audio. So all of that is exchanged in that kind of early handshake with the Facebook platform, and those settings will change based on the situation. So for encoding for 1080p, we might do one thing, or 1080p 30, we might do one thing. We'll do something else for 720p, and if we're doing a VR stream in the future, again, the encoding settings will be different. If in the future Facebook wants to change those encoding settings, they literally just change it on the server side. The encoding technology will pick it up and then in stream with the proper settings for the kind of new infrastructure or the new target. That's kind of the magic, is that in a lot of ways the ClearCaster is stateless, and each time you use it, it's told what it needs to do, how it needs to configure itself to best stream in that situation.
It kind of, what we like to say is that the ClearCaster is really an extension of the Facebook infrastructure. So, it's, once it's paired with your account, it feels like you're plugging an HDMI or an SDI input into Facebook directly. And it really not only allows us to optimize, but future-proof as well.
Perfect. For those who are listening, Daniel and Bob, we see your questions. We will get to them. There are slides here that are more appropriate for your questions, so we will move on, and I will weave your questions into the questions for Barry and Charlie. Moving on to the next one. Why does streaming video look so good with ClearCaster compared to competitors? And being on your marketing team, I have a hard time describing this, but we get this from our customers all the time. Why is the picture quality that's going to Facebook right now so much better than anything else that I can use in the market?
So I think there's a couple reasons. One, again, is that exchange of encoding settings. We're tuning to what Facebook needs at that time for that event, and so that's going to lead to the best possible stream on Facebook. I mean, but by far, that's like the kind of biggest reason. Second, we are doing, we'll talk a little bit about this probably later in more detail, but we are modulating the bitrate as we stream. And so based on the network situation, we will set the bitrate as high as we can for the current network conditions. So what this enables us to do is to make sure that we don't build up latency on the encoding side, so you get very little buffering or no buffering really on the Facebook side, because we're modulating that and keeping the stream, as close to the live point as possible. And then that also makes sure that we can deliver the highest quality stream, highest possible stream for your network conditions. Today we're sending a contribution type stream, so it's a higher bit rate than you would normally see for that given frame size, because the Facebook infrastructure is going to generate all the different encoding profiles for what is actually viewed. So because of that, we want to send the highest possible quality. With this bitrate modulation, it allows us to kind of ramp that bitrate up quite high and then adjust for what network is available. The other thing is, today we can do 1080p streaming on Facebook. Others will in the future, but today I think we're one of the only encoders that can do that. And again, you're going to get higher quality stream at 1080p versus 720p, which is what you'll get if you use like a mobile encode, the Facebook app itself.
And in the future, and in certain situations, since we are a trusted stream going into Facebook, we will be allowed to do pass-through streams, which will lower, multi-generational transcode losses through the system.
So we have a question here, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I would not do it service. But I don't know if I can read the whole thing. But we have a problem with our 1920 by 1080 TV signal being rendered in 720, and then the question comes off. Justin, do you have the question better? Yeah, where's the rest of it? Oh, there it is. Rendered in 720 by 576 P25 on Facebook and ClearCaster, registering the input as 720 576 I25. I just did two short test casts of our TV signal, and they came out 16 by 9 and 4 by 3 respectively. Is that a known issue?
No. I mean, we have had issues recently where our streams were being streamed back out of Facebook at 720p, even though the input signal was 1080p. That's been fixed in the last week or so. I mean, we certainly can dig into this problem more directly. but that's not
Yep.
the expected behavior. Certainly, 4:3 aspect ratio streams, there were some issues in the talent view that we've recently fixed, so those should be addressed in an upcoming software release. But we'd have to kind of run this one through support and dig into it more closely to see what you're exactly reporting.
And luckily for us, we have support on the line, so Jason might have a conversation with, again, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but Jason, if you want to tackle that one, that would be good.
It's also important to note, Facebook has a massive infrastructure, and there are times when their infrastructure may be such that they need to send streams out at 720p instead of 1080p for a variety of reasons. And that does happen occasionally, and they're constantly improving that and making that better.
All right, moving on to the next question. Why should I trust a device like the ClearCaster to work perfectly?
I mean, again, this comes back to the sole focus of what this project's been from the beginning, which is really quality. And I think you look at the two companies. I mean, Wowza's always been focused on quality. We certainly understand, what it takes to run a streaming service, on our Wowza streaming cloud product, as well as create infrastructure grade software for delivering streaming. And we certainly understand the protocols and the encoding piece of it as well. And we literally built this thing from the ground up to be a different kind of encoder that was really an extension of your infrastructure, where quality was built in from the beginning, and that was job one. So I think, that's kind of the main reason why we're asking you to trust us.
Well, and we work very closely with the Facebook team to optimize APIs and just it's a collaborative effort, and I think that leads to us being in a great position to truly deliver the best possible stream to Facebook.
Perfect. All right, moving on to the next question. In a typical streaming workflow, where does the ClearCaster sit? We get a lot of questions like this about, does this thing record, which is a question that's out there right now. Does it have production capabilities in it, which is another question that's out there already. Where would this sit in your typical streaming workflow?
I'll let you start, Barry, because I'll take them all if you let me.
So typically, a ClearCaster, obviously, it's an encoder, right? So you're going to have, if you have a multi-camera shoot or something like that, you're going to have it behind your switcher, and you're going to run your production feed into the ClearCaster, which then goes out to Facebook. If you're doing anything with titling or compositing, you're likely doing that upstream of the ClearCaster. You're probably embedding your audio and things like that upstream of the ClearCaster. So that's where it fits in the workflow in a nutshell. To briefly touch on the other questions, we designed the hardware to be very flexible. We designed the software to be very flexible. So we got a ton of stuff on our roadmap. We're certainly thinking about things like recording. We're certainly thinking about things like compositing and titling and things like that. And I can't say when a lot of those are going to happen, but they're certainly on our mind.
So hopefully that answers your question, Cheyenne. Can we add titles and news scroll? Not with the ClearCaster right now, but maybe in the future.
Got any more on that, Charlie?
But there are partners we're working with today that can do that, right? So as long as those titles are injected in the stream, kind of upstream from the ClearCaster, certainly they'll flow through. We are looking at adding those sort of features in the future, but today it would need to be upstream.
Eduardo just asked a really interesting question. I think this is exactly the right time to talk about it. Why should I use the ClearCaster versus the TriCaster? My marketing answer would be you use both, but I'll let you do.
If I needed the capabilities of a TriCaster, but I wanted the best possible stream to wind up to Facebook, I would use both. I do my compositing and my switching in my TriCaster, and I would send that into the ClearCaster to encode and deliver that to Facebook. Because as we talked about, that's where the magic is. You're going to get the highest quality, most reliable stream from the ClearCaster to Facebook.
And this would sit downstream of the TriCaster.
Yeah, your TriCaster would be taking presumably your multi-cameras in and whatever compositing you wanted to do within that system, and then you would feed that out into a ClearCaster. And you also get the bonus of the talent view and things like that when you're using the ClearCaster to do the Facebook side.
Anything to add there, Charlie? Or did Barry?
No, I agree. Like my answer would be to use both. Like I think we certainly have talked to customers in the near future where they're talking about using a TriCaster with a ClearCaster. I think it makes perfect sense.
So Barry, you just brought up the talent view, and I don't know if we have any slides that really talk about the burning questions that go into the talent view very much, but we do have a couple of questions about how would you talk back to audiences, or how do you see comments and emojis? Both of those answers would be in the talent view.
Yeah, it's exactly what the talent view is designed for. So the talent view allows you to not only view your stream so you can see what's going out, but also to react to emojis, react to comments in real time.
Yeah, and in fact, what was part of the design up front was the talent view idea, just to really embrace, kind of deeply embrace the interactivity of the Facebook platform. And again, that's what makes the ClearCaster fairly unique in that it, really is just not a general purpose encoder that you would use with any platform. I mean, it really is tuned to work well with Facebook and kind of what Facebook is. And that idea of embracing the idea of comments and reactions coming back, and the person that's giving the presentation or the talk or presenting the video to be able to react to them, real time and live, was an important piece of what we feel the ClearCaster should be. I think you'll see more features around that. We're looking at doing more around comment moderation and being able to make, allowing, a manager of an event to be able to add comments that show up on that same TV view. We think there's a lot we can do there. And so you'll see those sort of features in the future. But what you see now is kind of the basics of what we want to embrace with the Facebook platform and interactivity.
And one of the other key features of the comment view that just popped in my head is, the countdown. So, you get a frame accurate countdown in your talent view. So there's absolutely no doubt in the the performer's mind or the broadcaster's mind when I'm actually going live. There's no that awkward pause or getting stepped on. You know exactly when you're going live.
And I think we've seen a lot of success with that as it goes to the VOD, as Facebook automatically posts it to VOD. A lot of professional streamers are really glad that as soon as it goes to the VOD, that as soon as you push play, it starts right away.
Yep.
And the talent is introducing the video as soon as you start it, which is uncommon for Facebook Live right now, I guess. And since we're talking about the talent view, Bob asks, will you talk about the delay and low latency for real-time interactions? So as those comments come into the talent view or those emojis, what's the latency look like? What are we talking about from a real-time standpoint?
So from the ClearCaster to Facebook, the latency is literally zero. I mean, zero in terms of, other than the kind of regular network latency. We're not really adding any additional latency, especially in the kind of most recent version of the software. That's, fairly near to zero, minus ping times and network time. The latency through the Facebook infrastructure, I mean, we've seen that to be, I think it's like 15, 12, no, it's pretty low actually. It's like 6 to 8 seconds, I believe.
It ranges. I mean, we've seen 7 to 15 probably.
Right. So what you're going to see are comments coming in probably 8 to 10 seconds delayed from the true live point of where you're at, which again is not always easy to deal with, but certainly that sort of latency is fairly easy to kind of get over, in a kind of normal event.
Yeah, 8 to 15 seconds still feels like it would be very good for just, answering questions on air or...
Well, yeah, typically when you see a comment come in, you're already talking about something, so It gives you a little bit of time to actually react.
Exactly. That's perfect. Eduardo had another great question to follow up his TriCaster question. Why would I use ClearCaster versus Wowza Cloud? And that is a very good question.
Same kinds of things. Really. Go ahead,
right. I mean, you certainly, you could use one or the other, and we would love you to use one or the other and not something else. But yeah, I think in the future, we're hoping to make it possible to use the two together. So we are working on features, actively working on them now, where you would be able to stream to Facebook and Wowza Streaming Cloud at the same time. So we're kind of calling that syndication. And it's something we feel is important to kind of, again, extend the usefulness of the ClearCaster product and take advantage of kind of this idea of delivering reliable streams. We should deliver them to ourselves as well. And so we see the two kind of working together.
Right. So, but for right now, cloud for syndication, ClearCaster for the best possible experience.
You're still going to get a higher quality and a more interactive experience using a ClearCaster than cloud directly to Facebook.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I'm going to move on with the slide questions. So the next question is, why make the ClearCaster rack mountable rather than mobile? What was the thought process?
The short answer there is really time to market. We wanted to get a high quality device out as quickly as possible, which led us down the road of using relatively standard components. We didn't have time to design any custom hardware or build any super custom, mobile hardware platforms. So we chose the path that we're good at. It's an Intel-based system. We know how to tune and run high-quality encoders on Intel-based systems. We knew we could get the parts. We knew we could get the parts in volume. So there was a lot of considerations that from the hardware design side that led us to this. And honestly, this device is targeted at broadcasters, and broadcasters typically have an infrastructure where a rack-mounted device is probably preferred. And it doesn't mean you can't take it in the field. We've seen them mounted in trucks. We've seen them mounted in cases. We mount our own in Pelicans and haul them around, and people do take them in the field. That's not to say certainly that we aren't looking at other options and other form factors for the future.
Yep. We do have a case study on our website of somebody packing up a ClearCaster and putting it into a crane and putting it over their zoo and filming wildlife from the crane. So it certainly can be done.
I think the other quick side, one quick thing too, is we also wanted to make sure we had enough headroom to do all the things we wanted to do in the future kind of thing. So this is the platform that's very flexible for us. We're able to do 4K video, which will be coming soon as far as support through the entire system on the Facebook side, 1080p 60 and those types of things. So we felt like we wanted to kind of really come up with a robust platform that gave us a lot of headroom in this first version so that we could kind of experiment and play and put stuff out there to really extend our reach with the product before we kind of tied it down to something that might be less expensive, smaller, portable, that sort of thing. And so that was the other kind of reason for the choice.
Perfect. So you kind of mentioned about into the future here, and as we talk about this hardware, Dave asked a very good question. I know it's near and dear to both of your hearts right now. Is there a way to stream a backup feed in case of hardware network failure?
Redundancy.
Yes, so that's coming, actually. So the redundancy was built in, and this is something that disappointed colleagues we didn't get it out in the absolute first revision of the software and hardware. But redundancy is something we're right on the edge of. We need a little UI work done on the Facebook side, which is in progress. So we need a little bit of work on our side to do some testing. But the thing is built for redundancy, and Facebook infrastructure supports redundancy, and that will be coming very, very soon.
And we would love you to buy a pair of ClearCasters.
Yes, absolutely. All right, moving on. How much bandwidth does the ClearCaster need?
So today, since we're really a contribution stream into Facebook, meaning that the stream gets re-encoded on the Facebook side, the maximum bit rate for a 1080p 30 stream is 8 megabits per second. We feel that gives you a really high quality and is kind of an appropriate bit rate for kind of a contribution style encode for certainly delivery over the web. If you're doing 1080p 60, that goes up to 14 megabits per second. Again, we will modulate the video bit rate based on the network conditions. So if that sounds hefty for your network situation, we will adjust on the fly for the network situation to take full advantage of it. So, that today it's 8. When we do kind of more of a pass-through style stream where our top bit rate is actually what will be used on the playback side through the Facebook infrastructure, then that number will probably go down. We're still trying to figure out what it is, 4, 5, 6, something like that. But today the maximum is either 8 or 14, depending on whether it's 30 frames per second or 60.
So I'm going to allude to a question that's on here. If you're happily streaming at 1080p 30 at 8 megs, and everything's going hunky-dory, and then all of a sudden there's a network issue and it slows down, what happens? What does the ClearCaster do?
So we can sense that the network connection is getting backed up, and we will lower the video bit rate to match what's currently available. And then if that situation subsides and the network is again available at kind of a full rate, then we will modulate back up. So we are constantly, every second, kind of monitoring the TCP connection that's going between the ClearCaster and Facebook, and kind of adjusting as you go, as the stream is being streamed, and then feeding that information back into the encoder.
Perfect. So that happens throughout the entire course of the broadcast. Every second or so?
I mean, literally, I think it's every second. Like we're monitoring that TCP connection at a really low level. Like we've integrated this all the way down into the Linux kernel, where we're looking at like all the different round trip times and ping times and all of that to determine what the best course of action is based on the conditions.
Perfect. All right. Let's move on. ClearCaster sends to Facebook Live at 1080p 30, but can handle even greater solutions and frame rates. When will Facebook offer these? And I just want to say, we don't work for Facebook.
Right.
So
I mean, the short answer is when they're ready. Right. So yeah, the ClearCaster can do 1080p 60. It can do 4K P30, and we are certainly actively working on Facebook with those configurations. As you can imagine, there are lots of infrastructure hurdles to get through on the Facebook side for some of these things. Charlie talked about, just going to 1080p 60 almost doubles your bandwidth requirements. Well, that also doubles, the Facebook internal transcoding requirements. So there are certainly some things to get through, but it's a pretty high priority on both sides, and we're moving forward.
Anything to add to that, Charlie, or are you good?
No, that's true. That's where we're at. We're kind of testing and developing and working on it actively. So
Lawrence is pointing out that we might have had our own little bandwidth issue, or GoToWebinar might have had their own little bandwidth issue, and if we blacked out there for a minute, I apologize.
We really should be streaming these on Facebook Live in the future.
Yep,
that's right.
That's absolutely correct. Okay. Next question from the presentation. Does ClearCaster support the Facebook 4K 360 API?
So again, that's in progress. That's something we're working on. If you do a 360 stream, a VR stream today, it'll be at 1080p 30. But the 4K is something we're kind of actively working on. It's all wrapped up in the same 1080p 60 sort of work. Like we need to get what we call pass-through working, where our high bitrate stream is used as the high bitrate stream that actually goes back out to the player through the infrastructure. And that's a piece that we continue to work on with Facebook.
All right. Anything to add, Barry?
No, that sums it up. I mean, it's a collaboration and requires work on both sides.
Perfect. All right, moving on to the next. This hasn't come up yet, will we be able to use ClearCaster with Workplace by Facebook?
I feel like we're a broken record. So again, something that we're working on. Yeah, no, we're actively working on Workplace. We've had some successful streams kind of running through Workplace and test. There's still some work to be done to kind of finish that work, but it is something we're hoping to get done soon. And we're actually excited because we think our current kind of rack-mounted form factor is a very good form factor for the kind of Workplace customer. Most Workplace customers are really going to only stream to to Facebook. So they're to kind of workplace portion of Facebook. So we think it's a good fit for the product. And then even the talent view piece is like perfect for a like CEO type of speech or that sort of thing. In fact, we use it for exactly that use case. Like we do our own internal all hands meetings using the ClearCaster, and the talent view piece for the comments coming back has been proven to be extremely useful. So yeah, we think it's a great fit for that kind of part of the Facebook offering, and we're hoping to have that soon. It's just again, it's a matter of getting everything buttoned up and finished so that we can get it out the door.
I can tell you that our staff meetings are much more entertaining using ClearCaster and Facebook Live than they have been in the past. So that's good.
Exactly.
All right. Does ClearCaster allow cross-posting live broadcasts to multiple Facebook? Again, repetitive answer, right?
You should have just recorded the last
one.
Yes.
We're working on. Yeah. Something we're working on.
And again, this is
mostly a Facebook issue.
Yeah, a lot of these things, right? I mean, you know, there are definitely things we're working on or have been working on, and it's two-way street, right? We can't do some of this without the Facebook API supporting it, and you know, we're working as closely as we can to get these things out as soon as possible. We hear what people want, and Facebook feels the urgency as well, and they're working hard, and we're working hard, and I think you'll see a lot of really cool stuff in the next few months.
Perfect. I skipped over the scheduling question because I think we've pretty much done that, right? And Bob, your question about the VR release, same answer. Don't know, but it's coming. So moving on to, can I manage my streams from a mobile device?
So this is something that we're going to enable on clearcaster.wowza.com. So today the way you start a stream is you go to the facebook.com/live-create page, and you can kick off, kind of create a broadcast and kick it off from there. What we're doing is creating, in a sense, our own version of that same functionality on the clearcaster.wowza.com site, and that will be out very, very soon. I've seen a beta of it. Looks great. So that will be
totally
enabled on mobile.
Thing.
Yeah, so it'll work both on the desktop and on mobile. So you will be able to manage, kind of start, stop, manage, along with the preview, a stream both on the desktop and on mobile.
Perfect. All right. Next question. Am I able to view stream configurations and monitor stream health?
Very soon. So
yeah, so
this has been
coming in the same release.
This has been one of our top priorities, is to give, you know, what we're calling kind of an engineer view into the view of the stream, and even some health statistics of the ClearCaster itself, and you will see that in our upcoming release, which is right around the corner.
Good. Charlie, anything to add to that?
No, I just fixed a bug yesterday because we weren't pulling the temperature from the right place. So, yeah.
Perfect.
So, yeah, it's almost out the door.
Perfect. You make it very real, Charlie, when you're actually fixing the bugs as we talk.
Somebody's got to fix them.
Exactly.
Yep. Are there any additional analytics available outside of Facebook that you guys know of?
Like it's for stream analytics. Sorry, I knew we'd do that at least once. Yeah, the answer's not yet, right? So we do collect some of the data from you know, we have a lot of data collection from ClearCaster, and we can access a lot of data from Facebook as well. We need to figure out the best way to kind of package up and expose that for viewers as far as what makes sense, and certainly on our roadmap.
Perfect. I'm going to take a couple of these questions out from the audience here. Is there a way to trigger a stream with a GPI?
That probably means API.
API. I'm guessing it's a mistype. API.
So the answer is yes. So in fact, is that the question? He says no.
No, that's not it.
Hold on. Facebook, Twitter. I'm sorry, reading the question. No, you're right.
This is one of the questions from the audience, Charlie. Is there a way to trigger a stream?
I mean, I guess what is meant by that is our live create version of the UI will enable you to do it from ClearCaster.wowza.com. I mean, you can certainly also use the Facebook API to trigger the creation of a broadcast, and you can start and stop a stream. So that all works fine with the Live Encoder API that we use from Facebook. So you could do it kind of either way. I think that's the question.
Yeah, maybe the ultimate answer is you don't have to be sitting in front of the ClearCaster to start the stream.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And
it can be in a rack somewhere.
It can be in a rack somewhere, and we've actually had people have them in a rack, completely manage them, remotely,
Yep.
and also, have the talent view, hundreds of feet away from the rack itself.
Absolutely. And then another question: is this portable enough to carry in a bag and stream from outdoor locations?
Well, it's a short depth 1U rack mount box. So depends how big your backpack is. Sure. To be honest, it's not super heavy. It's not super big. It's a half depth box. So we have had people stream from remote locations. We have a wild animal sanctuary who streams from a remote location. I believe they mount theirs on a car or a truck, but if you can figure out the connectivity and the power issues, yeah, you can. It should be haulable.
We've got the GPI question wrong, and I think so. I'm reading more of the questions in the follow-ups, and there is no kind of hardware trigger in the ClearCaster today. It's not something we've even kind of considered, but now we're seeing enough questions about it. We'll think about it. But that's an interesting idea. So actually, a way to hardware trigger the start of a stream. You could certainly do it with a proper integration with some sort of piece of hardware, software running on it, and do it through the Facebook API, but not currently through the ClearCaster itself.
See, the audience is adding to the roadmap already, so this is good.
Perfect.
We are getting a lot of questions still about syndication, so one more time.
It's on the roadmap. Syndication is one of our highest priorities. We're looking into it. It is certainly something you will see soon, and that's probably all I'll say.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd say that that type of feature will definitely evolve over time. I think what we'll initially do is enable something that will allow you to go to kind of Facebook and Wowza Streaming Cloud and probably Wowza Streaming Engine, any one of those things. That's kind of the first blush at what we were looking at doing. And then, we've had a lot of talks about going beyond that. But initially, that's, I think, what we're probably going to do. So whatever you see in the first kind of rev of that's probably not where we're going to stay for long. We think syndication is important, and we will expand it as we go. We just want to get something out kind of quickly that serves the kind of meat of the market, and then we'll look to expand it in the future.
And I do want to say one of the tenets of our syndication is we will not sacrifice the Facebook experience. The Facebook experience will be perfect as it is now.
Cool. I think we only have a couple more pre-typed questions. What changes can we expect in ClearCaster's future? And this is the last question, really. And this is, I think, goes beyond all the functionality that we've already talked about in syndication and redundancy and all that kind of stuff. What's your vision for what this becomes?
I mean, really, this is the beginning of what it feels like a very long road, which I think is great. And so we touched on things like different form factors for the hardware. We're already playing around with different things. I got all sorts of piles of small little devices in my office that we're kind of looking at and working on. So I do think there'll be some iterations on the hardware side for sure. On this kind of software side and integration with Facebook, the possibilities are kind of endless, which is a terrible answer. But really, the kind of short-term to medium-term stuff is a lot of what we talked about today. It's this idea of syndication. We are closed caption support is coming in the next version of the software, which will be out soon. We're looking at enabling some sort of pass-through where our high bitrate stream will actually be the high bitrate that's viewed on Facebook. VR, enabling 4K VR 360 streams. Redundancy is coming soon. We're looking at the whole graphics, to be able to do lower thirds and slates and potentially graphical bugs that will be injected into the stream, from the ClearCaster. You can certainly do that today upstream, but doing that in the ClearCaster. Features like recording are interesting. I mean, it's a kind of long and varied roadmap, and we'll kind of chunk our way through it, but it really is the beginning of what we feel is a very kind of long path, both product for both the software side and the hardware side.
Yeah, there's really no end to the possibilities of what we can do, and we really want to use events like this and feedback we get from customers to help shape that, and what do you guys want? What do you need to help us work on those things moving forward? There's tons of cool things we can do with this product, and as Charlie says, it really feels like we're just at the beginning here, and there's a lot of places we can go. So, try one out and see what you can do. Let us know how it works for you, what it needs, what it doesn't do. Come talk to us at NAB. Come talk to us wherever you find us, and give us your feedback. We love it.
And I do think another piece that's important is, like, the core of the product is really all about streaming successfully at the highest quality possible to Facebook. So, like, what we do feel is definitely what is there today is the important piece, right? Like, that's
right.
That's the part that makes it kind of magical. Like, it's an extension of the Facebook infrastructure. The encoding settings are going to be set properly for every stream. Like, that core piece of what's there now is what most people need, and a lot of the stuff we're going to add around it is, also useful, but more kind of icing on what's already a pretty awesome cake. So, I mean, that's the way we're kind of looking at it as a platform, and we really are pleased with where we're at with it from, can I stream reliably with the highest quality to Facebook?
And that really is job one, right? I mean, that's what we're not willing to sacrifice. That's why we built this thing, to make that experience the best it can possibly be, and we'll continue to improve that. And that's always at the top of our list.
That's what makes this bulletproof for Facebook Live, bringing it full circle. I'm going to have a service level announcement here. When we say syndication, we mean going to multiple locations at the same time. So
yes.
Facebook Live, YouTube,
Wowza
Cloud, your own website, wherever you'd like to go. That's what we mean by syndication. I'm sorry, we're being streaming cloud nerds. So that's what we mean when we say syndication. Lawrence definitely thinks that the ability to start and stop a stream on mobility would be awesome, because his first mile is over bonded or cellular, and so that would really help his company. So, Charlie, if that's in the back of your head for roadmap, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And then the last question that I think is relevant: will ClearCaster be available to manage with an app in the future? And I think that's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. So our remote admin experience is it's a web app, but it's mobile friendly. So could we wrap that into an app and actually deliver it as an app? Sure, maybe we will. Really would depend on probably the feedback we get from people using the mobile side.
So if that's important to you, Minnow, let us know. That would it's feedback like that helps us define our roadmap.
Actually, we're doing it. It's forcing the entire team to learn React, because if we build it in React, we can reuse pieces of it. So
absolutely,
it's been a learning experience for everyone, which is good.
And Daniel wants you to put the engineer view into mobile too, while you're at it.
Check.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps up. Again, Charlie, Barry, thank you very much for being here and doing this for us. I know that you have bugs to code and engineering things to do.
Code bugs. We fix bugs.
We fix bugs. Sorry.
We fix bugs we previously coded.
I just typed pretty words. Appreciate all of our audience for being on and asking great, wonderful, interesting questions that will ultimately help us feed our roadmap and make this an even better product than it already is. So thank you very much to all of you, and thank you for listening today.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.